In my opinion, when you empower individual people to make decisions, they tend to make more coherent decisions and they tend to make better decisions.
Your business strategy has to be fundamentally different. Be around high-functioning, high-quality people and just copy the shit that they do.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 and 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 and 9. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Chamath Palihapitiya, and my take on his top 10 rules to success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Learn how to invest.
I started as a day trader effectively, meaning on the side, I would speculate in my teens and in my 20s. An investor is not a speculator and it's not a day trader. And I think that a lot of retail, a lot of normal people, the only way they will close the inequality gap is because they take it upon themselves to learn how to become an investor. The government's not going to save them. No law is going to save them. No, taxation of the rich is going to save them. They can save themselves. And you have to learn how to invest, which is to put money into the things you care about and then do nothing. Maybe I can just give you an insight into how I process any opportunity.
Sure.
Random company comes in to the top of the funnel. Immediately, I'm making a very quick, hopefully it's a decision, but maybe sometimes it's a judgment. And I'm asking myself, does this fit into my worldview or not? Meaning, is it in my circle of competence? And I have a very simple way of looking at this. Is it going to fix something in inequality that I think is important, or is it going to fix something in climate change that I think is important? Those are the only two things I care about. Inequality and climate change. Under inequality, there's a bunch of stuff. Financial equality is important. Healthcare equality is important. Education equality is important. So it allows me to organize a lot of different opportunities. And I'm trying to figure out, is there a consumer proposition here that's important for them? Does it make something more symmetric? Does it take something that was asymmetric and fix it? So that's my first judgment, which is qualitative. That's why whenever I start my one-pagers, it's always, what is the strategy? And you can read all of these one-pagers now. And what you'll get away from them is the first lens is equality and or climate change. Then I start to do the fundamental work. And this is where I have a real issue with a lot of people who say that they're value investors. I think that I'm a value investor. The thing is that when you look up the word value in the dictionary, it doesn't mean cheap. It doesn't mean a cigar butt with 2 puffs left, that famous Buffett Munger quote. I think it actually means something that has value. And so then I'm really thinking about, what are the cash flows of this business? How does it create a moat, right? Meaning in software, some technological way that's hard for people to compete with it. And then can I get it for a price where there's a margin of safety, where if they misexecute for a quarter or if they have a little hiccup, it's going to be okay. Because, we've got an entry point where 5 or 10 years from now, this thing will be 5 to 10 times bigger. And that's how we think about all these things. And if you look at the deals that I've done, they kind of map pretty singularly one-to-one to that framework.
Rule number 2, empower people.
I actually am not that interested in a bunch of social good, to be honest with you. I'm interested in change. I'm basically convinced that people right now who are in positions of power are there for completely the wrong reasons and shouldn't be. Okay. And so the question is, well, how do you change the dynamics and the cycle of power and the balance of power? And in my opinion, when you empower individual people to make decisions, they tend to make more coherent decisions and they tend to make better decisions. And so when you look at a lot of sort of the problems that are ailing the United States or ailing the world, these are problems that bureaucracies have created. So, why is it that we all talk about how education is the most important thing in the world? And every politician to get elected has to have a position on education. But there's more than $1 trillion of student debt. It's
the most encumbered sort of thing that an individual has to deal with. At the tail end of spending all of this money now, there's no guarantee of a job or any really meaningful employment. And then the worst thing is, if you actually go bankrupt, that's the one thing that won't get expunged. And so you can see how like the system is sort of tilted against you. It's really great rhetoric, right? But all of these people have no incentive to actually change the system. And so from my perspective, I'm more interested in sort of creating a dynamic where actually people are empowered and can live kind of like, lives where they are self-sufficient economically. They can do whatever they want. They can buy the things they need. They can have a great life. And if you look to these people who, again, we've put as false idols, they're just going to let you down. And they've let us down. And so I feel like technology and smart, people can creatively solve these problems in ways that policy and other things can't. And so I just want to do that because I think it's the right thing to do.
Rule number 3, find your drive.
You did grow up poor, is how you put it.
Welfare.
Tough situation.
Yeah, it was great.
How,
No, seriously, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
well, so I mean, seriously, was it?
It was incredible. I mean, at the time, it was horrible.
Of course.
We lived above a laundromat in Ottawa, Ontario, in a little French ghetto called Vanier. But I went to a really good high school, Lisgar Collegiate. Every little rich muckety-muck went there. I didn't. And so I secretly hated all of them. But what it really was doing was lighting this unbelievable fire, this like nuclear reactor inside my stomach, where I'm just like, I am just going to win. And, it wasn't really until Waterloo where it started to really unlock. Again, particularly in these work terms where I was in the work environment, I'm like, I can crush. I just knew that I could do it. So in hindsight, it was the best thing. Now, in part of it, why it was the best thing is I've now taken enough time to be introspective, to self-actualize, and to deal with it. But it came with immense amount of baggage. And for a while, it was like I just needed to be rich because I was so poor. And then you get there and then you're like, wow, this is really going to amplify either the best parts of my character or the absolute worst parts of your character. And there was probably a year where it was the worst parts of my character. But again, it's like, for me, it's been a journey of self-learning. And it was a hugely instrumental thing. Like I look at my children and I'm like, wow, like what boundary conditions could I possibly even remotely give them that will allow them to struggle in a way that makes them want to achieve great things?
Mm-hmm.
Rule number 4, be unique.
Your business strategy has to be fundamentally different. And what do I mean by that? If you are in the business of being a parasite on top of Google, your medium-term and long-term prospects are terrible. You're an impaired company. You don't know it. If you haven't figured out how to be unique, you're in a really tough situation. If you're a unique company that's increasingly become more competitive and similar to everybody else, you're running towards the Google buzzsaw versus away from it. And so, travel is really interesting because it is one of the few canaries in the coal mine about what their true long-term business goals and strategy and real issues are. And you see it play out with, TripAdvisor and Expedia. Some part of it is misexecution, as we talked about, some part of it, but it can be a bunch of things. But at the core of it is a decision that they will capture the overwhelming majority of profit in the travel sector.
Also, if you want to have more self-confidence and self-belief, I've created a special free program called 254 because the science says that it takes up to 254 days of consecutive action to build a habit. So what I'm going to do is send you an unlisted video to your email every day for 254 days for free to help your confidence and self-belief shift forward. The link to join is in the description below.
You were up and dressed and ready to go before your parents were up. You know why? Because you knew something unexpected was going to happen. That's how we should live our lives. Waking up with the understanding to expect the unexpected.
One of the real reasons we don't do the things that frighten us is because we are afraid of being judged.
Rule number 5, emulate best practices.
A lot of my life, quite honestly, is just copying things that I see. There's not a lot of original thought here. It truly is not. I mean, we can all pretend we're all geniuses. Honestly, be good copiers. Do you know what I'm saying? It's the best thing in the world. Like, be around high-functioning, high-quality people and just copy the shit that they do. Observe the shit that's, kind of crappy, and then don't do that stuff. It's not
complicated formula.
When have you used that best?
No, all the time. I mean, look, now it's funny. Like it's like, like you have a surface area of ways to spend your time now, or I do. And, I'm in this midst now where we are really scaling up what we're doing as a business. And I meet these people that to me are so iconic that they were sort of like arm's length people that are now sitting face to face, and they treat me like a quasi-peer. I wouldn't say a peer, but quasi-peer. But what I see is, I see some amazing stuff, and I see some utter dysfunction in some of the richest, most important people in the world. And I have to decide, how am I going to act? What am I going to embody? What am I copying? What am I not copying? And so I get a chance to now refine my decision-making and discipline. And that's how it plays out. I don't know if I answered your question.
Rule number 6, execute.
Revolution starts in evolution. So you could have the biggest, craziest, audacious idea in the world, but unless you can put one foot in front of the other and make that first step, you're screwed, and none of it matters. And again, all it does is it may allow you to, wrap yourself in some really elegant rhetoric. Maybe it allows you to, be really followed on Twitter and appear at tech conference. None of that matters. All of that crap washes out in the end. Because if you suck, you suck.
Right.
And you may be articulate, but if you suck, it don't matter, and you'll be revealed to be a sham. What matters there is, again, it's just that ability to understand what that first specific set of things need to be, with that broader, bigger goal in mind. But if you can't put your first foot in front of the other, and what's amazing, most people can't, because they get wrapped up in the rhetoric of the vision and the mission and all of this, grandiose, blobbity-blying,
Right.
that they screw up, and they're their own worst enemies. I like revolution, I like disruption,
Right.
But I'm skeptical that things start that way. I think things, let's just say ultimately 5 years from now, we look back and we think that there was a massive sea change politically in the Arab world because of the Arab Spring. That fruit vendor self-immolated because he was frustrated. Now, maybe he started a revolution, but that took courage to do what he
Right.
did. That's not right nor wrong, in my opinion. But my point is, that's an example of how a revolution started with, a small, or not a small thing. I mean, it was a big thing, but one thing that was tractable within him. And I think these broad-based kind of like, gnarly expressions of like how all of these huge, crazy things can happen, they happen over many, 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 many years. These are massive tectonic plates. It all boils down to one person doing one thing. And I think that for a lot of people, that's hard still.
Rule number 7, acquire skills.
We are in this really huge secular transition away from degrees towards skills. It no longer matters where you went to school, what you did. Don't tell me you have an MBA. It's irrelevant. It's useless. Who gives a shit? Learn to code, and you'll be employed for the rest of your life. I lost a kid, 24-year-old kid, to a big company in Cupertino, where he got paid $175,000 a year and $600,000 guaranteed over 4 years in RSUs. And he's not done anything ever. Okay? So all of you should teach your kids how to code. All of you. You should learn how to code. But my point is, it's about skills now. And so that's another reallocation of trillions of dollars.
Rule number 8, don't fear mistakes.
I'm not afraid to be wrong. I just think being wrong is overrated in the North American philosophy. We really, look, there are certain times where you can't be wrong. If you're a pilot, you can't be wrong, right?
Or a surgeon.
I get that. Or if no, it's not true. Actually, surgeons make mistakes all the time. They leave, utensils or whatever, not utensils, but the things inside the people's bodies. I mean, but I get how certain professions need to value the sort of like the binary distinction of right and wrong. But I think for most of us, it's really sort of like you're either learning or you're not learning. And I think right now, we create too much of a God complex around being right. And we don't celebrate enough the fun process of iterating. you know, and being able to like be in the grind with people and like laugh when things don't work, that it's not like the end of the world. So I think to me, like, that's probably the single biggest thing that people have to get comfortable with, which is like, just you're learning, and you either care about that or you don't. Like, if you're a good entrepreneur, like we were talking about this in the green room, nobody should grow up to be an entrepreneur. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. You should grow up to be really angry about something in your life that you want to fix or change to make better. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because then all of a sudden, like, you're not going to give up when something doesn't work, when something is wrong. You're just going to keep working at it because it's learning. But that mindset is only possible in that context. So I don't know. I just think like that's a really important thing to really internalize.
Rule number 9, define your values.
I think the most important thing that you can do right out of the box is define your values. And I see so many people who think it's like such a glib thing when are asked to literally write them down what you stand for, they stand for nothing. And I think it's very difficult for you to be able to build something when you don't know your own true character. Because the way that reflects itself, unfortunately, is you make a bunch of mistakes in hiring. And those people may be good at someplace else, but if they're not good for your company, then what you have are a bunch of disaffected people who don't understand, don't care the mission, and frankly will not go the extra mile. And it's extremely corrosive and destructive. And so I would say the single most important thing is just to literally write down, what are your core values? What do you believe unapologetically? And then don't bend them. And then when you're evaluating someone to work with you, do they really express those things and embody them? And more importantly, do you have a way of figuring out whether they do or not? And asking the questions that allow you to basically make those determinations. And when you get to an answer that doesn't really reflect your values, then do you have the courage to say no? And it's hard in the early stage because you're like, man, if this person says no, I have nobody else to work with. What the heck is going on? And I've just seen it now so many times where we've kind of capitulated on that, and we've hired people into a bunch of our companies and they've all failed. And when we look back, systematically, the single biggest thing is they did not embody the values that we had. That is the most important thing.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is transfer knowledge.
You sometimes like to take on a more hands-on role with the companies that you work with. Or is that normal of an investor or a VC to do?
I think it's probably atypical. I mean, that's sort of why we've constructed the space that we've constructed, which is to have a lot of these really interesting companies here very early on. And what it allows me to do is sort of transfer knowledge. I mean, look, right now, I've come out of sort of like, 12 years of operating some of the most interesting consumer businesses that have been built on the internet. And I've been a part of now 3 massively seminal, interesting products. Winamp, Aimon ICQ, Facebook. And so there's a body of knowledge there that's really relevant. But it's only relevant for a short period of time. 4 years from now, I'll be as dumb as any other VC. But in these next 3 or 4 years, I probably have some reasonable knowledge to transfer. And so the best thing that I can do is make sure I'm in a position to get that into as many people as possible. Because then at that point, what I'm hoping is then I'll be able to learn from them. Right. Because they'll really understand the rules of how the next 10 years will evolve. And then I'll be able to learn from them, and they'll feel, a sense of, not necessarily obligation, but like, that maybe hopefully a little bit of, gratitude combined with a little bit of, pity. And then they'll want to sort of, teach me.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? When you watch a video and you just get motivated, the sign says you have a 35% chance of actually following through. That's not good enough, Believe Nation. We got to take action. But when you get motivated and then you create a specific plan of action for when and how you're going to do it, your number jumps from 35% to 91% chance of following through. And when you commit to somebody else, like posting down here in the comments below, that number jumps to 95%. I want to know your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week. Put it down in the comments below so you can follow through and I can celebrate you.
Changing your mind is so powerful. I mean, change your mind. It makes for really, really, really bursty, difficult marriages at times. My wife will tell you. But man, is it powerful in business. Change your mind all the time. And it's amazing, again, where you'll find like really good scaled leaders want the right answer and they're fine with capitulation, they're fine with change. They really are, because they just want the right answer. And then you just get so invested in an answer. And then you build up all of this superficial logic to reinforce it versus saying, I don't know, oh, you know what, I changed my mind. Wow, another powerful thing, I think. I change my mind all the time.
If you want some amazing knowledge from Warren Buffett, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
To make $10 a week more doing something that you don't feel good about compared to something you'd feel good about, make the change.
I don't worry about the things that I miss that are outside my circle of competence of evaluating.